Thanks for staying with us. Now, the incidence of building collapse in Nigeria has been on the increase in recent times, drawing concerns from government and other stakeholders. It has claimed many innocent lives, valuable properties, and huge investments, with the main cause being the non-compliance with building industry construction standards and regulations for designated buildings. The use of substandard materials such as inadequate quantity of cement, concrete blocks, sand, poor workmanship, and overloading or increase in floors of a building contrary to foundational scope are some of the causes of structural damage. Joining me to discuss this is architect, co-founder and managing partner, Colton Group Limited, Ajulo Anthony. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Veronica. Good to meet you.
Right. We saw that this is not the first time we're having a building collapse. We've had incidents of building collapse in the country, and Lagos State being one of the states that has witnessed one too many of such collapses in recent times. But when you look at this building, for instance, a 21-story building, one wonders what could have caused the collapse.
Well, it is too early to speculate the real causes of the collapse of this particular building.
Yes, such buildings,
such buildings. But generally, what could have led to the collapse of such building in most cases are a number of factors,
Right.
The first factor could have been poor design. There could have been a design issue. Another factor could have been that the contractors or developer did not stick to the design specification of the consultant. As a matter of fact, oftentimes this is the major issue, maybe the consultant, when they did the design, they said, okay, this is a 15-story high-rise, and that was the basis for which the design was done. And then in the course of the construction, the developer decides to extend to 21-story. Now, this wasn't factored in the soil test. This wasn't factored in the foundation design. This wasn't factored in the load calculation.
But those who later gave the approval should have known.
So this is how it happens.
Right.
We have building code in Nigeria.
Right.
Oftentimes, when people get approval from the agencies, the Lagos State agencies or the necessary government agencies, when they want to start constructing, they get the approval. But then when they start constructing, they deviate from the initial approval that they get. And therefore, that's why you see that government goes about, they then go about locking this construction site and all that. Then you then need to go back for a reapproval, And oftentimes, they don't get the right approval, One thing or the other happen and they just get a little slap on the wrist and they get to go, and then they go and continue with the construction. When you are building a high-rise, if you are deviating from the initial design of the consultant, there needs to be a lot of factors that need to be put in consideration before you get approval.
Like
one
what?
Of it is that if, for instance, you are building a 15-story high-rise, you have an approval for 15-story high-rise, and you are going for a 25-story high-rise, the consultant needs to calculate, they need to check, they need to redesign and get you an initial design that you take back for approval, So in this case, did the consultant do that? In this particular case, the initial consultant that did the construction, there are so many questions that need to be asked. Did they give a new design? Was that design taken back to Lagos State government to get approval? If this were done, I'm not sure we'll be where we are. So these are some of the things that needed to have been done, because if you are changing from a 10-story high-rise to a 21-story high-rise, one of the things you need to do is probably there need to be an integrity test carried out. Will the design be able to take a 21-story high-rise, an initial design for a 10-story, will it be able to take it to a 21-story high-rise? I'm not saying that is the situation in this case, because as a matter of fact,
we do not know the
full details yet. Yeah. Investigations are being carried out, so it is too early, to speculate, But these are factors. There are too many questions that need answers. And I think by the time the Lagos State government finish, we think the answers should be made public. The public need to know. We can't keep losing lives. We can't keep losing lives because of greed, because of refusal to use professionals when we know we should use these professionals.
And that brings me to something the previous contractor spoke about, because you mentioned it earlier. The previous contractor, in a letter that they wrote last year, February, said that they can guarantee, because there are 3 structures there, they can guarantee 2 of the 3 structures. And the third, they can only guarantee to the 4th floor. If you look at that letter critically, that they can only guarantee to the 4th floor because there were perhaps some discrepancies, and that they wouldn't be responsible afterwards, and that was why they withdrew their services. Now they mentioned something. They said they do not have control of the concrete cube test result. You're smiling. I wonder what that is about, especially for buildings like this.
So interesting, Veronica. You see, when you're building a high-rise, the consultant is supposed to test the integrity of each floor, and then they're supposed to take a sample of the concrete that you batch for each floor and take it to the lab to run the test and to be sure that the strength you achieve on each floor meets the design specification, Right. And that's what the consultant is saying, If it doesn't have this, it can't really be sure, if
other floors,
if each floor has met the design specification,
right.
And the contractor not allowing him to have this raises a lot of questions. I'm sure that's why the consultant wrote the letter that he wants to pull out of the project, because if he has not done that, then he's in a lot of trouble now. Because the critical thing is the test that is carried out shows that, that the concrete meets the design specification.
That is what this cube test control is about.
Yes. For instance, maybe the design specification is supposed to be a C30 concrete, or C35 concrete mixed design. And then they carry out the test and they find out that the concrete batch on site only achieves C25. Then that's an issue. That's an issue. Then an investigation needs to be done. So that means that floor won't be approved without a critical check on what had led to that, So, and what are the reasons why you can achieve a lower strength than you are required, than is required, when you are trying to cut costs, when you're trying to cut corners, where you're supposed to, when you are reducing the required materials that you're supposed to use, the required quantity of cement, you are reducing the required quantity of reinforcement steel that you are supposed to use, you are not taking advantage of opportunities of technologies to use admixtures. There are technologies within the construction industries that contractors and developers can avail themselves of, that can help them achieve durable structures and reduce building collapse.
But stemming from the level of experience with this contractor, some have said that such things wouldn't come to play. Perhaps is the Nigerian markets, giving rise or encouraging such things where we see a flood of substandard products being used in building such kinds of story buildings or such buildings? Are we saying that the Nigerian market, especially the Lagos market, is encouraging the use of substandard product, or are we thinking, okay, people want to make more monies and that is why they are cutting corners at the detriment of people's lives?
So I think there's no straight answer to this. When you are a developer, oftentimes developer gets a loan from bank, when they are constructing, and what happens with bank loan, and sometimes the project takes 36 months, 12 months, sometimes even 48 months, and then the interest is climbing. You didn't know it was going to take that long, and therefore you are looking for ways to cut costs and all that, and sometimes because of that, you find out where if you are not a disciplined developer, you might not have encouraged, professional practices, So this may be one of the reasons, Secondly, I will emphasize this again, the need to use consultants, professionals within the industry is very critical. I was watching the news earlier where I saw an architect mentioning the fact that the notice board on the sites was showing that he was a contractor who was
and more or less a client.
He was the client, he was a contractor, he was more or less everything. In such a situation, you find out that, he's not allowed himself the opportunity to enjoy the technical support that he would have gotten from professionals.
But there are those who think that hiring these people also comes with a price that might be out of the box for some persons, and so they begin to hire other persons. Are we looking at perhaps maybe having some level of subsidized amount so people can easily hire these people? What do you think?
Well, that's a good idea, but I do not think that the cost of consultants is one of the most expensive thing within the construction.
Right.
It's not so expensive. I mean, it's poor judgment not to have to hire a consultant. I mean, you lose more money at the end of the day. You know, you lose more money at the end of the day. You put people's life at risk where you do not hire professionals. You know, you get shoddy jobs done. I mean, you buy house from developers, and then during the dry season and when it's the raining season, you can't sleep in your house because everywhere is leaking because they have not used the right waterproofing materials, the right building materials, and you have your whole house leaking. You know, you have dampness everywhere because people are trying to cut costs. So I don't think anything excuses you from using the right professional to save people's life, to ensure that people get value for their money, you know. So this is very critical if you ask me.
Now, an expert says that understanding that construction is a highly technical phenomenon is the beginning of tackling building collapse.
Very true.
Right. How so?
Very
Help us
true.
understand this.
You see, people think that construction is about block and cement. You know, put the block there, put the cement there, then buy the roof. You know, it's much more than that. I mean, when you are building that bungalow in your village or that duplex in your village, you know, you might get away with it once in a while. But when you are building a serious structure, you know, construction is about, it's a serious endeavor. I mean, if you're building a high-rise, there are calculations that needed to be done, the load calculation. You need to do soil tests. Sometimes you don't even do soil tests from one company, you do soil tests from 2 to 3 companies, because if you are building a 21-story high-rise, if you don't do a proper soil test to give you an idea of the right of foundation you need to do, you have a situation where you will just have lost a lot of money because you are trying to save a little penny. You know, so these are critical considerations, you know, that needed to be put in place. Construction is very complex, and we need to take it like that. We need to approach it like that. We need to use professionals in the industry. You know.
Now, speaking about the use of professionals and also checking the use of substandard materials, how do we address this issue as a people, as a government? Because we've had one too many collapses in this country, and we are losing a lot.
So I think the starting point in addressing building collapse in Nigeria is more or less the same solution to most of the problem we have in the country, you know, making the law work. You know, I mean, we have reasonable laws within the Nigerian building sector, even within the Lagos state government building sector, but more often than not, you have a situation where these laws don't work effectively.
But we have the Nigerian National Building Code that is yet to be passed into law.
Yes, yes. I mean, that's also a big issue. I mean, this code has been within the National Assembly for over 20 years now. It's not been passed into law.
Does that show that we are being serious to addressing this issue? Our body language, we have laws like this, yet we haven't passed it into law.
So it doesn't show that we are serious. It shows that we need to take building collapse with more seriousness. But even at that, the current laws we have, we are not even enforcing them well enough.
Right.
So it's not even about the new law alone. How about the current laws that we have? Are we enforcing them enough? You know, so these are issues that we need to consider. I mean, the current law, from the information I've gathered so far, that particular site was locked for several months. 4 months. I mean, in that 4 months, was an integrity test carried out on that structure before a new approval was given? You know, these are questions. There are too many questions.
They should have.
They should have.
So for them to have reopened it, perhaps an approval was done, and that was why they went ahead.
Yes, and that's the question. We need to find out, how was the approval done? What was done before the approval was done? What tests were carried out? You know, we need to know this. Was the initial design, you know, the initial design from what we are finding out was probably changed? How was it changed? What, you know, work was done? Which professional consultants, you know, recertified the design? You know, these are questions that needed to be asked. You know, was all this done? You know, this question needs to be asked with the benefit of insight to learn from this, to prevent future collapse, you know.
Are we really learning? Because like we said earlier, or established, this is not the first time. We always talk about learning from incidents. We have had several. Are we ready to even learn?
Again, it is the Nigerian factor.
Wow.
Veronica. The same reason why we are having building collapse is the same reason why we have a lot of issues in Nigeria where the laws don't get upheld. You know, if I am, as a developer, know that if I do not follow the building code, if I do not follow the approval I've gotten, my house might get pulled down. That I will not get by with just a slap in the wrist, or, you know, I will be more careful because I know I've taken a loan from the bank. You know, so we have to start with our intention, with the seriousness to implement even the existing law, while we also draft, you know, we advocate for the enactment of the national law. You know, we have to start with the enforcement of even the local laws in the states that we have, you know, and this is very critical. You know.
Now, the other issue is that with regards to perhaps also checking these sharp practices, there are those who are saying that perhaps we need to look at also subsidizing the costs. Government coming when it comes to building materials and all of it, have a subsidized amount so that developers might not also cut corners.
Well, I don't think that is feasible. The government cannot subsidize building materials.
Or come in any way.
What is possible is to do is, I mean, government can't subsidize everything in Nigeria.
Right.
I mean, what is possible to do is that the government can, you know, if the building materials are imported, the government can create a waiver for import or reduce the cost of import for locally manufactured building material. I mean, there are some building material that shouldn't be imported into Nigeria. We have abundant cement in Nigeria. I mean, we have enough cement in Nigeria.
Really?
Nigeria produces so much cement that we now export, so I don't think there's a reason why anybody should import cement into Nigeria. We have some construction materials, construction chemicals locally manufactured in Nigeria. You know, what we need to do is to work with most of these manufacturers more. Government should give them maybe tax waivers and all that, so that they can be able to sell this product cheaper. They should be able to clear their product and their raw materials
as quickly
easily
as possible,
at the port. You know, the biggest problem that we have in Nigeria today for manufacturers is the cost of clearing at the ports.
Really?
Yes, the cost of custom duties, clearance at the port, the delays at the port, demurrage and all that. You know, if you have a reduction in this, you find out that most raw material like cement and other factors might you know, enjoy a reduction in cost, you know. And there's a way government can also come in. I mean, there is no reason why cement's price should have increased by almost 70%. Cement is now almost 4,000 naira from 1,800, 2,000 and all that. So there are a lot of factors, you know, why people want to cut down on cement. When you were designing your structure, cement was probably 2,000 naira. Now cement is 4,000 naira for a bag. That's double. And you have calculated the cost of building the structures at this time. So you can understand a lot of factors that account for this. So, and I don't know why cement manufacturers are increasing the price, because we have abundant supply of cement. They have enough capacity to produce enough. So this, in places like this, yes, government can intervene, speak to the big players in the cement industry to see how they can reduce costs, you know. I know that probably dollar you know, crisis may have contributed to this, but these are factors that we need to look at, you know, to see how we can reduce this. And then they should take advantage of technology. Like I told you, there are technologies that can help you save costs and achieve the same strength.
What kinds of technology are we looking at?
Yeah, we have construction chemical technologies like concrete admixtures. You know, for instance, you can increase the strength of your concrete by 30% when you use concrete admixtures. You know, you can increase the durability of your concrete by almost 100 years extra when you use corrosion inhibiting admixtures, waterproofing admixtures. So these are new technologies that oftentimes, because developers want to save and cut costs, they don't. You know, I was talking to a developer the other day, and I said, how do you waterproof your building when you finish? Say, we don't do anything. We just lay nylon on the roof, and we cast we screed on top of it, and we tile. And I asked him why. He said, well, we need to sell these houses cheap to be competitive. So that's a point, you know. So in a bid to be competitive, sometimes some developers are looking for every avenue to save costs, you know. So these are some of the things that we need to put into consideration. Developers need to embrace technology. They need to know that people want good houses.
Absolutely.
You know? I mean, if you sell me a bad house, if you sell me a house that is leaking, you know, I won't refer you to another of my friend. Anybody that comes to the house would not want to buy a house from you as a developer. So why don't you use the right waterproofing material, use the right mixed design specification, the right quantity of cement, use the right reinforcement that the consultant has specified, the right grade, the right quality, because we also have a lot of fake product out there. You know, you have to be careful which of these products you are buying. So these are some of the issues that the developers need to put into consideration, you know, when they are dealing.
Now, for a state like Lagos State, what do you think the state should begin to consider? We established earlier that the state has been faced with several of all of these collapses. What should it begin to do now?
I think the starting point, again, is for the Lagos State government to look at its enforcement units. Beyond
enforcement, okay.
I think that's the first thing, you know.
Right.
We have the Lagos State Building Control Agency, you know. They are everywhere. You can't, I mean, I was doing the project a few months ago, and you know, we got the approvals and all that, and 4 days into the project, they were there already.
Really?
Yes. They are everywhere. They know if you're building a project that's a reasonable project, they find out before a month. I don't know how they do it. So the question is that they don't know. The question is not that they don't know where most of these projects are. The question is, you know, they need to enforce, you know, the laws more, you know, and they need to enforce it to the human face. Because that's another problem.
How so?
You see, enforcing with the human face should not be about getting people to penalize people. You know, it should be about getting people to do the right thing.
Okay, and you know how it is that when there is no penalty for certain things, people would not do the right thing.
Yeah, sure.
You know how we are.
I agree with you. I mean, what I mean is this, you know, you lock a building. The question should not be about the penalty the person will pay, which should be, of course, should be the penalty. The question should be that this building will not be opened until the right things are done. Not about just pay the penalty and you can go.
Right.
So don't make it about pay the penalty, go and see no more. No. You know,
ensuring that the right things are done.
Right things are done. You know, if the approvals were not gotten, if the approvals were gotten, but the construction was not done according to approval, ensuring sometimes it might be painful decision. You may have to pull down some building to save life. You know, so this has to be done. You know, we have to be sure, because at the end of the day, life is much more important than any assets. You know, I mean, as of today now, we have that over 22 people have died already.
Yes.
You know, so these are things that needed to be done. We have to be sure that it's not just about penalties, is also about ensuring that the right things are done. Even
perhaps that is where people say that there might be sharp practices. Not talking about this building now.
Yes.
Sharp practices in terms of corruption have also perhaps come to play sometimes when we talk about ensuring the right things are done.
Well, in our national life, we know that corruption is it's there. I mean, practically, corruption is chasing everything we do. You know, it's one of the things we have to battle with. So, I mean, I do not know if the corruption within the Lagos State government agency and all that.
We are not talking about this specific building now.
Yes, I mean,
but there are those who have talked about perhaps corruption comes to play when we're trying to ensure that the right things are done.
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. Like I said to you, corruption is part of our national life. It's something that we really need to fight. You know, it's something that the government needs to do more about. I mean, there are in this country, there are things you can't do. There are approvals you can't get without paying people money. You know, but I mean, I'm not saying that is the case in this situation. I do not know yet. I mean, the government is investigating, as I'm told. Absolutely. That even some suspension, some people have been suspended, so we do not know. And I hope that at the end of the investigation, the Lagos State government will make, you know, the investigation public, so that because there are too many questions that are begging for answers. You know, there are things we need to know: who approved it, how was the approval done? You know, were due processes followed? Was it on friendship basis? And because if due processes were followed, you know, because another thing we need to know is that truly, building collapse can also happen sometimes out of natural causes. Everything.
Earthquake.
Yes,
but we didn't have that.
Yes, of course. You know, sometimes we find a situation where everything may have been done right, but other factors may have left to building collapse, you know. So that's why I'm saying that we can also not totally conclude now until after the investigation is done, you know.
Are done.
So, right. And by the way, I'm not an architect. Just to correct that, I'm a concrete technologist.
Okay.
And
All right, Concrete Technologies.
Yes.
Interesting. Concrete Technologies, co-founder and managing partner, Colton Group Limited.
Thank you very much.
Ajulo Anthony, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.